Good morning, good day, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another live stream with the one and only me, DrTorment. Let's have a little look at the chat, see who else has joined us already. Hello to Cindy and Marty, lovely to see you guys again. And hello, SJ Curtis, that's been a while. Hello, welcome to the live stream. Welcome. So, you may have noticed, ladies and gentlemen, that this is a solo stream, so there will be no guest joining me today. I figured, well, with August being planned out as being an entire stream month with guests, that we have a little time for ourselves here today. Let me see here. So, today I don't really have anything special planned. Maybe some announcements, which is always nice. First announcement of, well, which is pretty exciting. Some of you may have noticed I have opened a Spotify channel. That is right, DrTorment has infiltrated Spotify as a podcast. You can find the link to it in the link tree in the description if you want to visit and support me there too. Now, so far the stories are already on this channel that are being told, but in an audio format only. For those who are more into that, I suppose, because I realize not a lot of people, well, not a lot, basically a whole bunch of people, but there are some people out there who prefer the, how to say, the simplicity of Spotify, as in the story doesn't end when you try to put your phone away, something like that. Ah, well. Anyway, it is exciting. I'm looking forward to see what the future will bring. And yeah, there you go, as Jay Curtis says it already. Nice, I use Spotify when I drive. See, so for people like SJ, this is like the perfect kind of dose of your own little DrTorment, without having to deal with the without having to deal with YouTube and its limitations, shall we say. But enough of the YouTube bashing. On to the next announcement. I'm glad to announce that the artist Isha, who is known to having made 2 fan arts in the past, has also went and made emojis for DrTorment. And with that I mean literally emojis to use as you go. I will show them on the screen right now. Here we are. And these are the images she made. They are all available already on the Discord. I have a little bit of problems of putting them all on YouTube, mainly because, well, that has to do with memberships and how many members I have on the YouTube channel itself. That kind of limits it, unfortunately. Marty says, hi to all the kitties. Yes, indeed. The kitties are around and they are active, so the chance for kitty chaos is pretty high nowadays. As Jay Curtis says, my kitties Felix and Ivy say hi. Hello, Felix and Ivy. Hello as well. You get your greetings from... oh, email. Not important. You get your greetings from Mother Lilith and the 2 daughters, Eve and Vici. All the kitties are here, says Cindy. Those are cute. Ah. We're already starting off great. To anyone new jumping into the stream, also welcome and hello, welcome. Just a quick rundown what we just said. First off, I have a Spotify. The link for it is in the link tree in the description, and also the announcement of emojis or emotes, whatever they are called, for the channel. Hello, dreadful anecdotes. Hello, evening indeed. Well, it's morning for us Euro lads, but oh, hello. Welcome to the stream, Dreadful. Welcome. I trust you're having a good day. Dreadful, is it alright if I made a little comment on our own project? Like, no spoilers or something like that, but just that we have something in the works. Well, I suppose I already said it by doing that, but... you know. Yes, of course, sir, says Dreadful. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is rather interesting. So me and and there comes the Kitty Chaos already. Marvelous. So me and Dreadful are in the middle of a collaboration once again. We already had a collaboration at first. I might even put it up on this live stream if interested. It's a very fun little video on Dreadful Anecdotes' channel where I basically play my most maniacal self. And our next collab is something more on the lines of, shall we say, Lovecraftian. That would be me, Dreadful, and two other fine narrators of a very selective choosing. So there's always going to be some quality attached to it. It's something we are very excited to bring to you and hope that it will be done very, very soon. That said, to the dear viewers, would it be interesting if I would go ahead for later, maybe now, who knows, that's entirely up to you, but the question is, would you like to see the current collaboration video that is between me and Dreadful at the moment? Of our last collaboration, that is. And of course, with Dreadful's permission, if it is alright if I played it on the live stream, of course, because I'm not just gonna hop over to his channel and play a video of his without permission. That would be unlawful. SJ says, I always love a good collab. Alright, SJ, so I'm gonna say that's a yes from you. Dreadful says that's perfectly fine with me, so I'm gonna count that as a yes as well from Dreadful. Cindy Marty, what do you think? Do you want to see a video of a collaboration between me and Dreadful? Cindy says, okay. Alrighty then, let me just get the board ready then. I also want to make a quick say that I highly recommend people to do visit Dreadful Anecdotes' channel itself. Dreadful is a masterful storyteller and is also very, very frequently, well, depends on the time, of course, but he also makes very frequent videos, more frequent than I could make them. So while waiting in between uploads, why don't you go ahead and visit his channel and have a look at his library. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. Here we go. That and that. And then after we have what? Now I have to say this is a video of about 30-ish minutes. Yes. Yes, it is. So it's a video about 30 minutes, so the first half an hour of this live stream should be rather fun. There we go. Oop, it's being difficult. Of course it's being difficult. It loves being difficult. Oop. Hops and hops, there we go. Marvelous. Simply marvelous. It just works. Like Todd Howard would say. Alright, I found it. I found it how it works. The crisis averted. I found how it works. Yeah, me and screen share, we still have a lot to do. Here we go. Please in theater mode, yes. Let me see if it... Now, just a final little checkup for me. And then we can get started. Alrighty, let me get the board out. Here we are. Now, before we begin, I'm going to have a little look into the chat again. Whoops. You might even watch me on the live stream video itself. Oop. Hello, Jinxie, and welcome back from making your spaghetti abomination. I'm not going to waste any words on that. You are... That is not fun, madam. Right, and without further ado, let us watch the collaboration between me and Dreadful Anecdotes in the video called I Found an Old Recording of the Most Gruesome TV Program, I guess, by Nomas39. Nope, let me just make sure that you also have the audio when I start this. Should be possible. Yes. If you don't hear any audio, do tell me. But now, without further ado, let us begin.
Me and Lila always carve dozens of jack-o'-lanterns every October, so they absolutely saturate our lawn on Halloween night. It was our thing. But looking back on it, now that I've lost her, I just feel bad for the pumpkins. I almost relate to them somehow, the way they were carved up, had everything of substance inside of them torn out, and left as hollow, rotting shells with forced smiles. Needless to say, I didn't cope with her death well. I didn't want to cope with it. I wanted the world to drown in the black sludge of my grief. I loathed the people I saw going about their lives, unaware that the world had already ended the moment Delilah died. The earth shouldn't keep spinning. Life shouldn't go on. Not without her. Even my relatives bringing me along to a trip to Kauai only made it worse. The most gorgeous place on earth, and it made me sick with hatred. Nothing that beautiful deserved to exist if Lila wasn't ever going to see it. It wasn't fair. I thought I'd never enjoy or care about anything again. Then I discovered media preservation. It started with taking some of Lila's old VHS tapes to a video repair place to fix some issues with the footage before it's digitalized. The job fascinated me. In a universe based on entropy, where everything inevitably fades away and is forgotten, restoring something lost is like snatching it from the jaws of death, right? Like flipping the bird to the universe and its so-called natural order. People die, but information doesn't have to. Now it doesn't matter how small, be it some god-awful plug-and-play licensed game or a cereal commercial from the 80s. It's my mission to recover it in as high a quality as I'm able and make sure it's freely available online for as long as possible. A couple of weeks ago, I came across a big haul. 4 boxes of old VHS tapes offered up on eBay for dirt cheap. Most of the tapes were just recordings of Shears episodes already preserved in higher qualities, but one Maxell E240 caught my interest. First of all, I'd never seen one so melted. Sure, Sometimes they were left in an attic too long, and the colors and audio started to degrade, but this one looked like it had survived a house fire. It was covered in soot and the smell of smoke, and had the overall shape of a chocolate bar left out in the sun a little too long. Second was the label, which read in neat Sharpie, episode 4,679,329, March 8, 2035. The casing was so disfigured, I had to bust it apart just to pull out the tapes and re-spool them in a fresh cassette. I tried to iron out the creases in the tape as best as I could, but I had no illusions about accomplishing much. The mylar surface had been irreparably warped in places by whatever fire had half melted the thing. Imagine my despair at the sight of that dreaded no signal. I could clearly see the tape wasn't blank, yet no amount of adjusting the tracking or trying different TVs or VCRs accomplished anything. Just as I was about to give up, though, the thing just suddenly started playing properly at the exact instant the clock struck 3 a.m., as if it had only now decided to work. My all-nighter had paid off. I didn't dwell on the fact that this miracle fix had been impossible. If I had any sense, I'd have torn the horrid thing out of my VCR and buried it beneath holy ground. Instead, fool I was, I sat down and watched. At first, the thing seemed unwatchable. The audio was so distorted that the show's theme song emerged as a low, crackling, stackety wail that made my head throb, and the logo was completely indistinguishable through the flickering and interference. I thought it was a lost cause for a moment, but then a figure appeared and cleared away the static like Moses parting the Red Sea. It was the sight of the show's host that hooked me. He was just perfect. Perfect in every way. I knew it just looking at him. Infinitely handsome and likable and charismatic, and he always said the exact perfect thing. The only issue is, I don't remember a single thing about him now, in the same way you can't remember a dream that seemed so clear to you while you were experiencing it. He just appeared in my memory as this abstract blur in a sharp suit, yet at the time I was awestruck, even before he said a single word. I can't even remember a word he said. It was like he was speaking another language, one I felt as opposed to heard. I'll try and describe it as best I can into words, but know that it's only a pathetic imitation.
For another night of laughs, prizes, and fun for the whole family with your host.
I noticed that the audio and visual distortion seemed to suddenly intensify the instant he said his name, rendering it completely illegible. Idiot I was. I figured that was a coincidence.
Tonight is a night of celebration, folks, because thanks to the support of loyal viewers like you, we've just been approved for, get this, 200,000 more seasons.
The live studio audience went wild with applause. I put that in scare quotes because, as far as I could tell, besides the host, the studio seemed completely empty, as if he was standing on a plain white stage that extended outwards into infinite darkness on all sides.
For those just joining us, the game here is simple.
He explained that this was some sort of trivia show. Every time a guest got an answer wrong, it brought them a little closer to some sort of unspecified punishment. And if they got it right, he smirked.
Well, they get to delay the inevitable.
I wondered what he meant by inevitable. I didn't have to wonder long. The host gestured to a curtain that hadn't been there moments ago, which raised to reveal a middle-aged man. You know the type. Bushy mustache, grey hair, round-rimmed glasses. Kind of guy you'd have doing your plumbing. He couldn't look any more out of place, stood up and restrained in that. What the hell is that? I recognized that metal coffin-looking thing from a medieval torture museum I went to once. The Iron Maiden. The lid hung open. Countless long, needle-like blades poking inwards threatened to poke a million new holes in him if it was shut. His situation was not lost on him.
Where am I? What the hell is this? Oh, lucky guess.
The host joked. More canned laughter.
I know you always loved watching those trivia shows, Malcolm. Weren't you always sitting there grinding your teeth, seething that it wasn't fair, that you should be the one up on stage, winning big?
The man paused. Even he seemed mesmerized by the unreal perfection of the host before him.
This is a game show?
All you have to do is answer a few questions. Think you can handle that, Malcolm?
He pulled out a cue card without waiting for an answer.
And our first question, what were you doing the night of February 18th, 1998?
The man seemed baffled.
Just sat on my couch watching the NFL, I think. I'm not sure how I'm supposed to remember.
He let out a startled squeal as a horrid buzzer sounded. On cue, the lid slid a third of the way closed, making him flinch.
Ooh, I'm afraid that's the wrong answer, Frank. But you know what? I'll give you one more chance. What were you?
Following a girl home.
The man cried out.
From the bar. There. Are you happy?
Correct!
The canned audience began cheering.
Such honesty. Now, our second question. Just what were you carrying while you followed her?
He hesitated for a little too long, and then the buzzer sounded again, and the lid slid so near to closing that its blades began poking uncomfortably against his skin. He tries to press himself against the back of the maiden, as well as his restraints would allow.
Jesus. Okay. A knife. A knife.
Aw, if only you'd said that just a second earlier.
Another big question.
Our third question. Why, Malcolm? Why did you do it?
That set Malcolm off. He started thrashing, clawing, screaming.
Let me out of this thing, you maniac. You can't do this to me. You know who I am. Is this some sort of sick joke? My lawyers will have your head for this. You...
And then the buzzer. All of a sudden, the lid slammed shut full force, and the man was utterly silenced, save for an unnatural, drawn-out wheeze.
Another wrong answer, Malcolm. I'm afraid I was looking for. Because if I can't have her, no one can.
I admit it. I laughed, out of shock more than anything. How was this allowed on TV? I took it as some sort of dark comedy show, and it was kind of satisfying to see that freaky character get his comeuppance. Still, there was something unnerving to me, seeing the man's eyes through the opening in the maiden, wide and red and terrified. They just looked a little too real. But the maiden disappeared as quickly as it came, before I could dwell on it too much.
Oh, envy. Definitely one of my favorite sins.
More laughter.
Stay tuned, folks. We've still got a night of fun and games in store for you. But first, how's about a word from our sponsors?
Cut to a corporate logo, which I again couldn't recognize.
This segment was made possible by Bua Health, which has recently announced a brilliant new initiative to protect our citizens from skin cancer by removing their skins completely.
The camera cut to a massive industrial building resembling a solid concrete cube around 50 meters in width and height. Its surface bore arcane symbols etched using carvings of wailing, tormented faces. The host would occasionally be rendered inaudible by a deafening metallic scraping from within, though he didn't seem to notice. The only protrusion from the building's cubic shape was a single smokestack belching a scarlet-red smoke into the atmosphere. A queue of gaunt figures waited at the entrance, herded and coerced by their grim overseers, and there were no words to describe the procession of scarlet ghouls limping out of the building's other end.
Owing to the non-linearity of time, the brand new grand skin peeling machine has spontaneously appeared several years before construction deadlines, and indeed before it was even conceived by anyone in our timeline. People have rushed all the way from Mellowbowl just to try this miracle of technology out on opening day, and so far, the reviews have been stellar.
He shoved his microphone in the face of a shambling thing that could only scarcely be called a human. Tatters of flesh clung to its exposed musculature, blowing in the wind. Its eyes were the only hint of color in that sea of bloody red, and they were wide, white, and terrified. The thing screamed and wailed for as long as it could before the last tendons connecting its jaw to its face snapped, and it was left to choke and gurgle.
An amazing wail. The results speak for themselves, folks. The grand skin-peeling machine is a hit.
So far, I was still laughing along and having a good time. The sight of the next guest, however, started making me nervous. It was an old lady. She couldn't be a day younger than 60, the sort of sweet, elderly woman who in a just world would be cooking chocolate chip cookies for her grandchildren in a comfy cottage somewhere. But here she was, tied to a metal chair, eyes wide, shaking like a leaf. Unlike the last contestant, she seemed to know exactly what was happening.
In exchange for our loving endorsement, they've agreed to loan us one of their star employees. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for the Liquor Smart.
Something slunk from the darkness far behind her, or perhaps it'd be more apt to say that the darkness birthed its whole cloth. It was like a living shadow, and it took my eyes a moment to register what I was even seeing. How do I even begin describing this creature? I could say it looked almost human, or at least like something that may have been human long ago. Or I could start with its skin, which was all black and shiny as latex and seemingly smooth on first glance. But if you looked closer, you'd realize it was covered in a million tiny reptilian scales, almost like a shark. Its head was a bald man's, utterly devoid of any distinguishing features, like the basic stock template for a human being. It was notable only for a complete lack of pupils and irises, its eyes a pure white. Its body defied basic biology in so many key ways. I had to stare at it for what felt like an eternity just to wrap my mind around its physiology. It was at least 5 or 6 meters long, by my estimate, composed of multiple human torsos stacked one on top of the other like segments of a centipede, each melding with the ones around it at the waist and shoulders. Each torso sported a pair of short, stubby arms that propelled it with a terrifying grace. It ended with a pair of human legs, perpetually bent on their knees, beneath a tail that looked more like its coccyx was poking free from its body. The old lady could clearly hear it and kept futilely trying to turn her head around enough to get a peek at what stood behind her. I mouthed uselessly, "Don't. You don't want to know."
Glad you could join us again, Miss Wettersby. Judging by our ratings last week, you seem to have been a fan favorite.
Her voice was so soft, I could barely hear it below the static.
Oh God, please. Why won't you people let me go? I told you. I've never done anything. Never hurt anybody. There must be some sort of...
He waved a hand over her, and it seemed to forcefully snap her mouth shut.
Please, Miss Wettersby, save your breath for the questions.
Another cue card.
Your first question, my friend. Where did you and your husband buy your first home?
She had to think about it for a long time. Eventually, she cried out,
Alabama. Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
Ding, ding, ding. Why, you're already doing better than our first contestant. Next question. What breed of dog was your childhood pet?
She had a pained look on her face as she fought. Eventually, a timer started ticking down. It wasn't visible, so it wasn't clear how much time she had left exactly, but the sound it made got more shrill and high-pitched with every second.
Miss Weathersby, need I remind you that we have a time limit on this show?
A tear ran down her cheek.
I keep telling you people, I don't know. I have dementia. I can't remember. Please.
That buzzer again.
I'm afraid that was the wrong answer. Lekesma?
The old lady shuddered at the sounds of hundreds of feet drawing a little closer to her.
Now, your first grandchild. What did he look like? What color were his eyes? His hair?
She was crying harder now, like it hurt her that she couldn't remember something so dear to her.
I told you. I can't remember. Why are you doing this to me?
If you don't remember them, why should they remember you?
The host mocked as the buzzer sounded and the beast drew a little closer.
Really? Do you believe they still even think about you? Or do you think they're glad that the old bag of bones isn't there sucking up their inheritance?
This went on for, God, it could have been an hour. I was glued to the screen all the while, frozen with terror, praying for this nightmare to just end, for her to make it out okay somehow. He poured over every little detail of the life she lived and the people she loved, delighting in how little of it she could still recall. And the thing grew closer and closer until she finally felt multiple pairs of hands resting upon her shoulders. The thing was looming over her now, and a long black tongue, a few feet in length, emerged from its mouth and ran trails of dark saliva over the back of her head. She looked broken down, eyes raw from crying, and I could tell by the dampness of her dress that she'd wet herself.
Now, Miss Weathersby, our time here has been fun, but I do believe it is time for our final question. Tell me, what is the name of your only son?
She couldn't even answer anymore. She just stared ahead like her mind was a million miles away. He cackled as the buzzer sounded one final time and threw his cue cards aside.
Thank you for playing, Miss Weathersby. Better luck next time.
I wouldn't say the thing unhinged its jaw like a snake, but that'd be an understatement. The way the thing's face malformed and wrinkled and stretched as it opened its maw, it no longer looked even remotely human. Its jaws must have parted at least 30 centimeters apart, revealing a second pharyngeal pair of jaws that lashed out and gripped the woman's skull, pulling her headlong into that darkness. I could hear bones crunching and snapping as its throat constricted down around her body, peristaltic muscles compacting her into a meat slurry bit by bit. Yet she just wouldn't die. Even as her skull and upper body were already crushed and compacted, organs and muscles pressed into mulch, she still kicked her legs, twitched her fingers, let out a gurgling that must have been some attempt at screaming. She was squirming even as the beast snapped its jaw shut around the last of her, condemning her to whatever torments awaited her inside the creature. And all the while, that horrible laughter.
Don't worry, folks, she'll be back next week, and the next, and the next.
Needless to say, I wasn't having fun anymore. In fact, I had to turn away and fight the urge to throw up. I stood, about to turn the TV off, and...
Don't touch that dial now.
I froze. There was something chilling about the way he said that, staring right into the screen, as if reacting to what I was doing. I hated that grin on his face.
The real show is just beginning.
And with the barely restrained excitement of a child on Christmas morning, he yacked back another curtain, and I recognized everything. I recognized that crappy bootleg knockoff Always Sunny in Philadelphia jacket that was so gaudy and terrible it instantly became her favorite thing in her wardrobe. I recognized those subtle hints of slight acne she disguised as fake freckles. I recognized the way her grey eyes would remind me of those overcast mornings at the beach at Hilton Head and pointing out all the cannonball jellyfish washed up on the sands. I recognized that tattoo of the name Rocky, how I'd held her all night long as she cried into my shirt after her childhood cat had died. It was Lila. I shuddered, gasped, fell from my seat, as if I'd been punched in the stomach and the air had been knocked out of me. I couldn't breathe. This couldn't be real. I was dreaming right now. I must be. I just had to wake up. But I couldn't wake up. Nothing I could do dispelled the sight of her curled up in that thing, that bronze statue of a bull. Horns jutting on either side of a head that roared silently up at the heavens, all while the love of my life was locked in its hollowed-out belly, visibly only through a pane of glass. I could hear her cry out in shock at where she'd found herself, and every whimper felt like it drove a knife through my chest. The host soaked in the moment. It was ecstasy for him, the suffering of it all. He stared dead into the camera like he was looking right at me as she called,
What is this? Where am I?
Why, I have good news, my dear Lila. You're exactly where every American dreams of being. You're on TV.
He pointed to the camera.
And we have a very special guest in the audience tonight. Your very own beloved Jackson.
I shuddered, hearing my own name ooze from his fetid lips. His facade of perfection was slipping, and there was something so profoundly ugly beneath it. Her eyes snapped back to the camera, confused, despairing.
Jackson? Baby? What's happening? What is this?
I don't know, I thought, gripping the sides of the TV so hard my knuckles turned white. But I'm going to get you out of there, baby. I'm going to find whoever did this, and I'm going to bury them all so far beneath that studio that they'll never...
I'm afraid Jackson hasn't joined us quite yet, my dear. But if you truly love him, surely you'll give him a show to remember, won't you?
He taunted her.
All I want, after all, is to ask you a few questions. In fact, I'll offer you a special deal. Get even a single answer right, and I'll let you go free. But get one wrong and, well...
On cue, a fire was lit beneath her. Small, smoldering for now, but she whimpered as she noticed the heat. We both realized in that instant what this was. By now, I was screaming things I can't repeat here and slamming my hands against the TV screen as if I could reach through and save her. She bit her lip and acquiesced, not like she had any room to argue. The host grinned and readied a cue card.
Your first question. Where are you, Lila?
I don't know. How am I supposed to know?
You do know, Lila. You know exactly where you are.
He smirked at her.
Here's a free hint. What's the last thing you remember before you woke up here?
She thought about it and choked back a sob, visibly shaking as the realization slowly settled in.
But why?
The horrible wail of the buzzer cut her off.
Oh, too bad. I'm afraid you've run out of time.
Seemingly, as if on its own, the fire doubled in size. Sparks licked the belly of the bronze bull and began to ever so slowly heat the surface. She pawed around in the tight confines, searching for any reprieve from the scalding heat all around her as the metal grew hot like it'd been left out in the sun on a summer's day.
Please! Oh God! Let me out of this thing! It hurts! It hurts!
The host seemed to breathe in her pain, as if stealing a moment's indulgence.
Now that there's no doubt about where you are, my dear, let us proceed to the next question.
He switched to his next card.
Did you believe in God in the end?
Oh, of course!
She pled her case as if she was being tried in court.
My entire life. Every day I gave to the poor, helped the sick, did whatever I could to honor him.
I am afraid you misunderstood my question. I asked, did you believe in him at the end? The very moment your pitiful little life was snuffed out.
I always believed. I never forsake him.
Yes, I know. You lived a good and holy life, didn't you? But what of the very end? You and your little husband were so excited to deliver your first little baby boy. But oh, tragedy! It all went wrong, didn't it? Your precious little boy didn't make it through childbirth, and you followed closely behind. That whole business with the botched pregnancy, it was, what do you call it? Ah, yes, a test of faith. And I'm afraid you failed. In your final moments, you watched the light fade from your child's eyes, and you assumed, wisely in my humble opinion, that no kind and loving God would allow something like that to happen. Funny how, after a lifetime of dutiful service, all it takes is one little mistake at the end to bring you here, to us.
I'd never seen such depths of despair in a person's eyes, such emptiness. Like with every word, he'd been scooping out another piece of her until she was hollow. And then that buzzer roared again, more shrill than ever, and I could barely see her little window through the smoke and flames. The belly of the bull was turning orange in places, and I could hear her flesh start to sizzle like meat on a grill. There are no words for the noises she made. No words at all.
And our last, final question.
He continued.
What were your last words to your poor beloved Jackson?
I love you. I called out the answer. Bloody fingerprints stained the TV screen from my slamming my hands against it as I screamed the answer over and over. I love you. I love you. I love you. At some point, I forgot that there was ever a question. I was just screaming it at her, as if hoping that she could hear it, that it could bring her a modicum of comfort in that place. The buzzer sounded again. I couldn't bring myself to look. All I could hear was the roaring of the bull and the steam rising from its bronze nostrils. The curtain fell. Silence drowned the sound. The host dropped all pretense that he hadn't been speaking directly to me.
Now, Jackson, you just might be one of my new favorite audience members this show has ever had. I know this must have been hard for you, but if you'll just stay tuned, I have one more show I know you're certain to love.
I didn't bother to touch the remote. After all, nothing could be worse than what I'd just seen, right? Wrong. Horror racked me as the curtain rose and I saw a man chained to a chair. I pulled away like a caveman witnessing fire, cringing and stuttering, face wet with sweat. It was the sort of fear that worked its way into your bones like a bad chill that left you shaking, teeth shattering. It was me, an older me, sure, but not by much. 10 years maybe. A gaunt and hollow version of me, one twisted by 10 years of depression and hard drugs, but it was unmistakable. His eyes widened as he recognized the host.
Oh, God, please, no, it can't be. Oh, Christ, let me out of this chair, you.
Come now, we wouldn't want to use the Lord's name in vain, would we? I mean, that would be a sin.
The host laid a hand on the other me's shoulder.
It may have been a few years since you watched our program, but I'm sure you remember the rules, don't you, old friend?
The other me was wordless, on the verge of hyperventilating, just as I was. The host was giddy with delight.
Now, our first and only question is one I'm sure our viewer will be very interested in. What sins exactly do you think landed you here?
The other me tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. I could see it in his eyes. The years of self-destruction, the bitter hopelessness, the whirlpool of nihilism and vice and decay, the suffocating depths of a man. The darkness. How could he put it into words? The sound of the buzzer was like a pig squeal.
I'm afraid that our viewer's going to have to figure that out for himself. In the meantime, your punishment. Well, we wouldn't want to spoil anything.
The curtain slowly began to fall, just as a couple other of those black, grotesque monstrosities emerged from the darkness. The curtain covered them all before I could get a good look at their obscene, twisted, asymmetrical figures. All I could hear was the crunching, the sound of skin tearing like paper, the screaming that went on for longer and louder than a human throat or vocal cords could endure. The image and audio were beginning to distort, glitch, burn away. The tapes were physically melting as they played. My VCR was starting to overheat, sparks pouring from its front panel. The host's voice jumped around in tone, his voice fading into the static blur as the tapes bubbled and boiled and distorted.
But, my friends, I'm afraid that concludes tonight's episode of our show. So with a final farewell to our dear, beloved viewer, Jackson.
Just before the image melted away, the camera seemed to jump forward until his face filled the screen, his eyes piercing into mine as he cackled in that sing-song voice.
See you soon.
And that was... I keep forgetting the title, my god. I found an old and most gruesome TV show, a collaboration between dreadful anecdotes and myself. I hope everyone enjoyed the show. As SJ says, that was great. Thank you, SJ. Really thank Dreadful for it, because he did the bulk of the work. I was just lending my voice there. And let me just